I was turned on to audio comedy by groups like the Firesign Theater, who did a parody of old-time radio called Nick Danger, Third Eye. And I remember just waiting for the regular show to come on, and all of a sudden the radio station played that, and I thought, what is this? I didn't know it could be like this. And just pretty much cemented what it was I wanted to do with the rest of my life.
No.
That is not.
Next year we should entitle this panel, eight voice actors struggle to use 3 microphones.
I was told there'd be no math!
Anybody?
You took my answer.
Yeah, ditto. Well, I was raised largely by my grandparents who grew up in the radio era. And so when I was a little kid, they used to send off for these audio book versions of these old radio plays like War of the Worlds and like Inner Sanctum and The Shadow, all these things that my grandmother had grown up with listening. And they had this really cool old radio that they had refurbished into a cabinet with like stereo equipment inside of it, so they could put the tapes inside and then close the thing, and it looked and sounded and the lights, everything, like you were just listening to an old-time radio. And so it was awesome, and I was absolutely transported by that stuff when I was a kid, because, I don't know, I wasn't allowed to watch a lot of television when I was very young, because they didn't believe in it. They thought, oh, an hour here, an hour there, but let's not just set you in front of it. So I didn't have a lot of traffic with TV, but I loved just the word pictures that these radio plays would create. And I fell in love with Orson Welles, and later found out that towards the latter half of his life, when he was doing more television appearances and things like that, like going on the Dean Martin show to do Falstaff of all things. God, I miss those days in television where like some guy could be like, I'm going to play Falstaff on a variety hour. Like, what actor goes on Saturday Night Live now and does like a scene from Hamlet? It doesn't happen. But there's this weird time in television where all these old actors were kind of finding new ground in their careers, because television was like, we don't really know what we are yet, so let's just do anything. And there's all these really, really great old interviews between like him and Dick Cavett. I was speaking of Orson Welles with like Dick Cavett and all these other great radio personalities that were really hard, fun interviews. And Welles was just a great storyteller, a legendary raconteur. Half of everything he said was bullshit, but what glorious bullshit it was. And so I just fell in love with that kind of personality and the way he thought about his own work and what he'd done. And I've always his particular genius was for kind of promoting himself as the guy that's like, well, I'm just doing it because I love it. But Alien, I mean, he was just a weird, cool guy, and that he made acting seem really cool to me when I was a kid. And so I thought about, I just felt he made it legit for me, I suppose. And I first encountered him on the old radio plays, Mercury Theater.
No. But my father was a huge fan of The Shadow, so that I am familiar with that, and he always used to get very excited over that as he would tell me about it. What is it? What is it? The Shadow knows.
And The Shadow was played by Orson Welles.
Yes.
That's a big shadow.
It was also played by Alec Baldwin. Yeah.
That's a slightly smaller shadow.
Unless you're his brother.
Yes. Good question.
Good question. Thank you. I love that, like, screw you, walk.
Somebody's holding up a pink bunny.
Big bunny. John.
Come on down, they put a microphone right there. Woo!
Coming up,
Hey,
you're
come
the
on
next
down.
contestant on the prizes right. Dun, dun, dun. Stage fright.
Which washing machine costs more? You got the crappy game with like
A new car!
So, what was the first anime you've ever watched, and what was the one you watched last? As in, like, yesterday you watched something, and then watched something
It's like
since.
the last anime you will ever watch.
You watch it and you die in 7 days.
Mine was Speed Racer.
Ah.
And yeah, and I still love it because even for anime, it's really dramatic. Well, there's a nail in my tire, The last anime I watched? I wanted to watch Hellsing last night, but this hotel has no Cartoon Network.
We're staff elevators. That's probably what we're saying.
My first.
Yeah. The first anime that I saw, I think, was, I believe it or not, I believe it was Sailor Moon. So, it was a mixture of Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball Z before Funimation picked it, when it was only being done in Canada. Yeah, Ocean Dub. And so, in the last one that I watched, the last anime that I watched was, oh gosh, what was it? I think it was, actually no, it was Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods. That's the last anime thing.
The last 8 times you watched.
The last 8 times.
You've seen that movie.
I have seen that movie so many friggin' times because it's so good. That's why I totally nerd out with Kason over it. I'm like, Kason, do the voice. Do the shoe voice.
And he hasn't seen it yet.
Yeah, he hasn't even seen it, so oops.
The first anime I ever watched, I didn't know, was from Japan. It was, and they came one after another after school. It was G-Force Battle of the Planets, it was Star Blazers, and Voltron. And those were the three I used to watch in a cluster all the time. And then, and by the way, short story, so I was talking about this the other day. G-Force Battle of the Planets, or Gatchaman. There's a character that I used to watch, was called, the English dub, it was called Keop. Keop was the little one with the buck teeth, and he had a speech impediment. So if he was going to say, I like peanut butter, he would go, bruk, tick, tick, I like peanut butter, bruk. It turns out he didn't have a speech impediment. The scriptwriters just couldn't find a way to fill the flaps. We would be fired! Can you imagine? So it was just like, I don't know, make him talk funny, put the bruk, tick in there. So I was childhood over. And then the last, actually, the fandom for anime has actually it's raised the bar so that now we could never get away with something like that. And the last one I saw was Space Dandy. That was the last one I watched.
I'm with Case, and I totally grew up with like Battle of the Planets and Gatchaman, and particularly Star Blazers. That was the one that really left a mark on me, and Voltron. And it's funny because my awareness of anime kind of came in waves when I was a kid and I was watching all these really old classic shows. I wasn't aware that it was anime. I mean, there was no name for it. It was just stuff that came over from Japan. But we
called them cartoons.
Yeah, it was just cartoons. It was cartoons about people like, intergalactic battles and these crazy story arcs, often very dark. And wow, this is cool. I got out of anime later when I was around my teens because that was the time of like Pokemon and stuff, and I just wasn't the audience for that, so it was cool. But I refound it after Cowboy Bebop in the late 90s. And I was like, oh, that's right, this stuff is really cool. And by then it had a name for me. But I guess the last one I watched was the show I'm working on now as an adaptive writer, which I can't tell you. But it's pretty cool.
The last one I watched, the same answer as Tatum. Different show, but same. Can't tell you what it is. Second to last thing I watched, probably some of Volume 2 of Kill la Kill.
You know what Patrick hasn't seen yet, hasn't finished yet? Titan.
In all my spare time. Let me get
You gave me crap for Battle of Gods. I had to throw it back at you.
As far as the first thing I saw, I don't even know what it was, and I could be inventing this out of whole cloth in my mind, but I swear back in the day, when I was young enough to like being up at 6 a.m. to watch cartoons seemed like a good life choice. So this was many moons ago. There was some show, it was some fantasy show, and the art style was very Dragon Questy. I'm sure it got bastardized and rearranged all to hell, but 7-year-old me was just like, so yeah, but not a great answer from Sites.
Sorry.
Great answer. All
right. One of my very first animes, very definitively, Star Blazers. Loved that show. I used to watch it every morning. It was on every morning before I went to school. And so Star Blazers was my very first anime. Back then it was Japanimation.
Japanimation?
Yes.
Animation.
Oh, way back then.
How
A little old.
insensitive that is.
I know. How un-PC. But yeah, Star Blazers was one of my favorites. Cowboy Bebop also was one of my early favorites. The last anime that I've watched, which is something I don't typically do, but is Kill la Kill. Watch an anime while I'm actually ahead of time before I'm actually working on the show. So Kill la Kill was the last anime that I actually watched.
I'm with you, Rachel. The Two Robinsons. Speed Racer. I used to watch that with my dad, and we used to love to sing the theme song, you know, go Speed Racer, go! Right. And then a few years ago, not a few years later, a lot of years later, when they rebooted it, they cast me as Trixie. And that was the most awesome thing, was to call my dad and say, hey, guess what? Remember when we used to watch that? Yeah, so he was excited for that. The last thing that I watched, quite honestly, is currently Sonic Boom, the new Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon coming out. I play Amy Rose, and they gave us a screening of a couple of episodes, and you guys watch it because it's going to be awesome. But that was the last thing I watched, because apparently I only watch things I'm in. I'm like that. All right.
Let's see. The first anime I remember watching was reruns of Kimba, the White Lion. I know, right? Yeah. Oh yeah, so good. And the last thing I watched was Titan, so which would be a great mashup, like Attack on Kimba. It'd be great. Who lives down in deepest, darkest Africa? Squish.
Too soon.
I'd watch it.
Too soon.
That's picture all jumping above the rooftops, and so there's.
Come up to the mic if you have a question.
You gotta be quick, man.
You'll be next.
Hi. I'm just this little happy, but thank you all so much for coming. You guys work really hard, and we really all appreciate every single one of you. So thank you. That's what you didn't get me. That's what you. I did ask this question of Miss Rachel last night. It was a really cool answer, so I just wondering, for you guys, I know you guys do a lot of voice acting, but if you guys could do live action, what film franchise would you be in? And just to be fair, for me, it would be The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings.
Can it be a TV show?
It can be a TV show.
Any live action.
Any live action.
Well, Game of Thrones is one of my favorite TV shows. So I would love to be a part of that. True Blood is done, thank God. I loved it for a while, but it just started going downhill. Game of Thrones, and what was the other thing? There was another one too. Pretty much Walking Dead would be fun too, but Game of Thrones is probably my #1 choice on that matter.
Can I add to my answer? Hannibal. It is one of the best things on TV, and maybe one of the best things I've seen in the last 10 years. It's phenomenal. Or Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. too.
The show's off the air now. It's done, so there's no chance of me ever being involved with it. But man, I would love to have been part of Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
That show was just amazing. Also, I think about, I'd love to do stage again one day as I get older. But I was I've really lately fallen in love with a kind of an obscure musical called Barnum. Do you know what I say? Yeah, P.T. Barnum's Barnum. I would love to do that. But yeah, those are mine.
I know.
Deep in thought? I guess I don't know what live action. I feel like it would be. These are clearly the words of a man who just doesn't get the chance to do live action. It would be weird for me going from you get to be like monsters and demons and big tough guys to you're our low rent Seth Rogen. You know what I mean? That would definitely feel like a step down. I wouldn't turn down the work, but it would feel very weird to suddenly be you can only play what you look like. You know what I mean? One of the things I like about VO so much is that you've got the spectrum. It's like musical theater and opera. If you sound right, we can make you look like the dude at a distance. Except we don't even have to because it's audio only. But you know what I mean? It's that same conceit of, you're Zoroastro, you're the big bass, and you're 25. But you've got the pipes for it, so yeah. So I don't know what I'd do. I'd be the dude who didn't take PE class seriously and dies right away and Walking Dead. I don't know. It's a weird question. I mean, it's not a bad question. It's something I've never been posed